Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we've just been to see The Long Walk.
Yes.
It's a thriller, fundamentally. It's dystopian. It's based on a Stephen King novel from 1979, I think, when he was writing as Richard Bachman. And supposedly this has been a long, long time, decades in the theoretical making. Like, lots of people have tried to adapt this, been working on adaptations. George Romero, I think, was. It's finally wound up in the hands of Francis Lawrence. This film starts off with text on screen saying, "Dear Mr. So-and-so, Raymond," whatever his name was, "you have won the lottery. You have been selected to represent your state in the long walk," which means that you will be walking for as long as you possibly can. You've got to stay above 3 miles an hour. If you drop below that, you get a warning. If you get 3 warnings, you get shot and killed. And whoever wins, there's one winner.
Does it say shot and killed in that letter?
Doesn't say anything about that in the letter.
That's important.
Yeah.
Right.
But they do know this. It's the long walk, the idea of the long walk.
Yeah, they know this, but we don't know that until the first one happens.
Yeah. Or if you've seen the trailer. In fairness. But yeah, you're right. Like, in theory, the film is waiting to surprise you with the first death. The first execution. And then there's one winner, and whoever wins gets untold riches and a wish of their choice. Jen said to me right at the start when this letter comes up, she goes, "Oh, so this is just the Hunger Games, right?"
Well, exactly.
And she was more right than she knows, because Francis Lawrence, the director,
it's all Hunger Games.
He's made like 5 Hunger Games films. He also made Constantine and one or two other things. I mean, I didn't know his name, and then you look at his thing, and it's Constantine, I Am Legend, Water for Elephants I've never seen, and then it's just Hunger Games, yeah, and Red Sparrow as well. Mind you, I mean, this, you know, the novel. The Long Walk comes before the Hunger Games, but, you know, he's found his niche, right?
Yes.
I thought this looks like good fun from the trailers. You know, it's high concept. It's just one thing we're going to walk for as long as we possibly can. And this is not a film where you'll be looking at your watch going, how long's left? Because just the dwindling numbers tell you how long there is to go. I had quite a good time, but it's not a good film.
Well, I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. But like you, I think it's not a good film. And actually, through the first 10 minutes of the film, I thought, who the fuck is this shitty director and cinematographer?
Yeah.
You know, because there were all these close-ups of one of the protagonists, the character played by Cooper Hoffman. And you'd see the elbow of the character played by David Johnson.
Next to him, yeah.
Or next to him. And you think, what kind of framing is that? Right, like, I mean, you know, even if it is widescreen, you could imagine a better way of showing that, where you just have like this elbow hanging off the screen. I thought it was ridiculous, and that happened all the time, you know. And then there were like these shifts on focus, which were kind of shifts in perspective, shifts in audience perspective. Yeah, so sometimes you could see that there was a kind of a designed element to that shift, and sometimes you couldn't. I mean, it was kind of driving me crazy. Why do you want to shift attention away, from the background character? Why can't the background character also be in focus? I mean, you know, there were all these decisions that I thought were amateur, actually. You know, well, it's not only that I thought that I couldn't kind of understand them, but I actually thought they were poorly done. Yeah, and the lighting the same. I thought, who lit this movie? Like, who designed it, really? I hear that the cinematography has been praised, but certainly not by me, and I would like to read someone on why this is good cinematography. To me, it was like dinky and dark and inexpressive, right? It was all kind of washed out, kind of grey brownness, right? So
I expect that people are probably responding to the fact that you're thinking, how many ways are there to shoot people just walking in a straight line for a long time? It's a little bit like phone booth, you know. Okay, guys can be stuck in a phone booth for a whole film. How many angles can we find to shoot? You know what I mean? And I think, and there are times where...
I thought phone booth was much more imaginative in resolving that problem than this film.
I think it probably is, but I know it was a more fun film anyway, phone booth. But anyway, not to completely compare it to that, but just there were times here when, I mean, there were times I completely agree with you on some of the framings. There were times when I thought the film did find interesting ways to shoot people, or, you know, certainly once the cast got a little sparser as more and more people die, you know, it would spread them out in frame as they kept on walking forward, and it would shoot them from like a 45-degree angle, so it had them all nicely spread out. And I thought, this is just nice, right? There is something nice about some of these compositions.
Well,
it had its moments visually,
yes,
but I think that's probably the kind of thing people are responding to. Or not the lighting or the choice of colour.
Okay, so let me rephrase this and kind of turn it over. I really ended up liking the film very much, right? And I think the reason why I ended up liking the film is because of the screenplay and the narrative structure of the story and how it began dealing with, kind of philosophical issues about being, but also societal issues, how to behave in a completely dystopian and oppressive culture. What are the ways of being a good person? How do you struggle against it? How do you keep on living, right, in the face of, these, these deadly strictures, right? And I like the way that it created these characters, the way that it then kind of bumped them all off, right? The way that each of the discussions became a discussion on things that make life worth living: love, friendship, family, etc. Right? So I thought the narrative pull and the narrative structure kind of made the film really worthwhile, right? I think the cinematography and the direction, well, the direction is not fair. Okay, but let me say vaguely the direction added very little to it. The direction of actors I thought was very good. I thought the actors were quite good.
That's interesting. I thought there was not many good performances. I found most of them very broad. David Johnson, who we've seen before in Rye Lane and in Alien Romulus.
I loved him.
Who I would really like to like more, and I think I definitely liked him more in Alien than I did in Rye Lane. I still find him quite amateurish.
I really loved him.
His accent, I think, it kept varying in intensity at the very least here. It was coming in and going out, and I thought, this is not very good. Cooper Hoffman, I don't think is a very good actor.
Oh, I thought he was. And actually, I loved his casting, because for much of the film, you think he's the hero, right? And maybe actually through all of the film, because in a way...
Well, he is the protagonist, fundamentally.
Yeah, I think, certainly from most of the film, he is. And I thought how daring, to cast somebody who's not particularly attractive, who's chubby, verging on fat, really, in this particular role, right? Because he is kind of, at least one of the stars of the film, And, the only thing that he's got to sell, so to speak, is his personality and his acting, really. And I thought he did a good job of it. I ended up really liking him.
I mean, I liked everyone.
And I thought his casting was daring for this film, a film like this.
I mean, I liked everyone. There's no one I didn't like, and I didn't mind the broadness in a sense, but I did find it very broad, and I suppose I found it kind of what I expected of a film like this, which I thought, this is like, actually, well, I thought it was probably going to be cheaper than it was. It turns out the budget is some $20 million, which I think it looks like it cost half that, especially when you consider that the actors won't have been expensive actors.
Exactly.
But I was expecting this to kind of look kind of cheap and going from the trailer and stuff, and just basically sell itself on its concept, which it fundamentally does.
It does,
and it's okay. That was my level of expectation, and so it was met.
Yeah. Well, I didn't expect anything because I didn't even know what the hell it was. But actually, I ended up liking it very much. Really, we've seen two zeitgeist films, if we can call them that, right? Today, yeah. The other one being
One Battle After Another.
One Battle After Another. And of course, there are problems with the use of the word zeitgeist because, as people rightly point out, people use the term zeitgeist, but then, there's another 190 films released that year that have nothing to do with, America as a dictatorial, authoritarian state, right? So kind of, there are problems. But I think it is a film that speaks to this particular moment, even though the novel was written, in the 70s, and the film was probably made over a year ago, and so on. Yeah, this idea of, America being an authoritarian state. It's a film in which everything that nature brings is beautiful, but everything that's man-made is a disaster, right? So you see cars by the highway, you see the poverty, you see bicycles kind of strewn over, right? I like the way that kind of it builds, this idea of, something beautiful but kind of destroyed, and, this culture where people aren't allowed to read what they want anymore, or hear what they want to hear, or, it is kind of an authoritarian state, which leaves almost no possibility of dissension, right? And that's kind of articulated very well. And then as the boys walk, right, kind of you can see them trying to dissent and ending up dead, right? And the conversations continue, right, until kind of, the final conversation, which I found kind of fascinating and kind of moving, really.
The ending surprised me, and so the spoilers certainly for the ending, because there are so many ways you imagine a film like this can go. At the start, I'm thinking, okay, so it's set up to have one person win this at the end. Who is it going to be, right? Like initially, of course, you're thinking, well, the guy who starts the film will be the guy who ends the film, right? Otherwise, why is he starting the film? You're also thinking, or at least I was, are there other ways this could end? Could they break out of the rather like Snowpiercer, where it's like he works his way up to the front of the train, but the end of the film is in destroying the system, defeating the system, and moving out of the train that he's been stuck in this whole time. You think, is it going to be something like this? And will the two of them or a whole group of them be able to like work together or something like that? So the way in which it was handled, because ultimately we do wind up with one person winning this, everyone else dies, but the person who wins it is the David Johnson character, having tried to sacrifice himself. Cooper Hoffman says, no, don't do that, and then he sacrifices himself instead. And the way it's the change in the characters, isn't it? Which surprised me, because they're essentially set up after some time as a kind of binary. Once we've learned enough about who they are and what they want, we get Cooper Hoffman is in this for revenge. So the Major in particular, the Major who runs the Long Walk and is constantly talking to them the whole way through, killed Cooper Hoffman's dad a long time ago. His dad was teaching books that were banned, and these are books like your typical like 1984 and Dostoevsky and all the rest of it. And in an act of defiance, he refused to bend the knee basically to the powers that be and got himself shot for it. But it was a revolutionary act, and so he wants revenge for what he did to his dad, and he says that his wish will be a gun so that he can immediately kill the Major on TV, because it's all a televised show as well. On the other hand, you've got the David Johnson character who sees goodness in everything, or the possibility for goodness, and is able to make light. He's the guy who throughout the entire thing is keeping people pepped up, and he's trying to support people, and very few people in this whole thing see it as a competition, despite the fact it obviously is. They're all helping each other out, and he's kind of the king of doing all that. And so the shift in the characters that happens right in that final scene, and one shift leads to the other, is Cooper Hoffman sacrifices himself, saying, you need to win this because I don't have what you have. And so, although I can't do it myself, I can see it enough that it should be you, which is interesting. And then David Johnson's character takes that experience that he's right in the middle of. He's just watched his friend sacrifice himself for him, and he takes on his wish, and he kills the Major. And so the light and everything that Cooper Hoffman's character has seen in him is immediately replaced with a very raw act of vengeance right in the moment. And it's an act of vengeance that's done for the Cooper Hoffman character. It's that same act of vengeance that he's enacting, but I thought, I'm glad this ends in a clever way, because the ending of this one's going to be so fucking hard to do.
Well, I still don't think they succeeded very well. So I love the bit where the Cooper Hoffman character dies, and there's a close-up of his face, and you have America the Beautiful playing, right? I love that moment.
And fireworks overhead.
Yeah. But then the ending is kind of ambiguous, yeah? So he kills the Major, then you see a shot of him, shot from below, so he looms large, and you see a path ahead, but why is no one shooting him? I didn't
well,
really get that ending moment.
In those shots, the streets seem to have cleared, and so there's I think there's something dreamlike or hallucinatory or imaginary going on there. Because one imagines that yes, he would have shot the major and immediately been killed himself.
Yes,
and that must have happened.
Well, but we don't know, and I think the film could have given more of a clue. Yeah. So, for example, it's quite conceivable that because he's the winner and this is being broadcast nationally, kind of that was his wish, and that was his action, and there are no repercussions. I mean,
I suppose so.
I mean, I can imagine that in this type of film or in this type of story. So I would have liked more of a nudge from the film about. Yeah, you could leave it ambiguous, but still nudge in a particular direction. Whereas this, to me, just felt I was just puzzled.
I suppose so. Although I do think that the ambiguity is the point of that, and I suppose for it to be a kind of meaningful, kind of productive ambiguity, you need to not really go into it or nudge it in one particular direction. What I would take from it, or what I would imagine from it, is that the Cooper Hoffman character has been talking about doing something that will cause a change. Right, and they say, well, you can't wish for anything that changes laws or anything, like no policy. And he's like, no, I won't do that. But what I will do will cause a change. He's imagining that his act will lead to revolution in some sense. And so the film is at least setting up the possibility that you imagine that is what it does when David Johnson does it. It's interesting because we've seen two films today that are about revolution in some sense. One much more overtly than the other,
and
but this is what this film,
authoritarianism as well.
Yeah, this is what this film comes to, though, and this is in a sense a much more concrete act of revolution than a lot of what we see in One Battle After Another, which, as I said, I found kind of vague. Although I think the other thing, I think where the films match up is that the world which is built and the oppression under which these characters live is vague. I think in both, or in maybe even more concrete here, because we get stuff about the banned books laws and that sort of thing. We are given a law that is cited that the dad has broken but it is pretty vague. The world building is very vague. How this so the idea we are told in, I think it's the major at the start, says the long walk was set up because of the war that we had, and we will soon be number one in the world again because the long walk inspires people to work ethic and all the rest of it. And you think, like, okay, I guess I buy it a bit. Like, I'm going to see the rest of this film. I'm here. But really, how is this supposed to inspire people?
Because if you don't work harder, you get shocked.
Yeah, well, that's not very inspiring.
Work will make you free.
I know. Like, it's kind of vague, and it's very dumb. And you buy it for the sake of watching the rest of the film. But none of this is very smart world building, and I don't think any of it really hangs together.
It's a film that lacks texture, and in that sense, it's unfair to compare it to One Battle After Another, which I think is a truly great film. This is kind of B movie making, really, almost by definition. But I think it's got a really smart screenplay, right? And I think kind of the narrative kind of is very propulsive. It keeps moving. It keeps you interested. It's bringing up all these interesting ideas about, kind of what the world is like and how to kind of keep on walking one step at a time in situations that are so difficult, and what is valuable in those worlds, which is love and friendship and community and building bonds with other people. I loved all of that in the way that the film really almost kind of systematically builds up those themes. So, this is a thing where kind of what's important in a way is the story, and the sad thing is that the storytelling almost bypasses what could be achieved cinematically, right? Yeah, that it is kind of, it's a screenplay on which images are hung.
I'm sort of surprised that you like the screenplay as much as you did. I don't know. I didn't find it as interesting as you did, but I suppose I can see what you're getting at and what you responded to.
Yeah, well, I was with it. I was with it, and I was moved. And it is kind of like a little bit of a protest film against, existing conditions. And I think it conveys that very well without hitting you over the head with it. I think part of what you don't like about it, which I agree, well, I'm assuming this is part of what you don't like about it, is very broad and it's cartoony. The major is a ridiculous figure. It's hardly believable. It's played very broadly, right? It's kind of full of all these stereotypes of types of people, right? You know, the Chinese guy, the Indian guy, etc. The slightly crazy waspy guy,
I suppose I see it as quite mechanical. You know, like I see the ways in which the film is working its way through the characters, finding ways to eliminate them. You know, we get the point where they go up a steep hill, and like 14 of them die that night. It's like the film has to find a way to kill a lot of characters in one go.
So what you're describing as mechanical, which I would agree with, but I would describe as it's really well plotted, right? But actually, the plot isn't given enough texture, you know, by the direction or the cinematographer to be more than the screenplay. Yeah, that kind of,
I guess
you know,
so, yeah.
I think, you know, quite a good story, that kind of, that lacks those aspects that, you know, a better director would have provided it with, which would be like textures and kind of depth and better performances.
Yeah, I did like some of the shots where they were kind of going through towns or, you know, looking at passers-by. I did like some of that. It reminded me of shots in Dark Waters, the Mark Ruffalo film about DuPont poisoning the town where they're based.
Remember that.
He's the lawyer who spends a long time, spends years trying to get DuPont to pay for this poisoning of the water locally.
Well,
and he's driving through the town, and he's looking out his window, and he sees, and it's the people that he looks at, and the way that they look, and the way that kind of the stores are shut down, that kind of stuff. Remember you remarking upon it looking like kind of Depression era photography.
Yes.
And this in a similar way has some of that feeling of it's just that look on the world that you're passing through. And,
well, Jeff Nichols' films also have that. Right,
yeah.
You know, they're often set in rural places, and then you see that everything is rusty, or doesn't quite work, or but you know, Jeff Nichols' films more vividly and poetically evoke all of that. I mean, frankly, there's not a trace of poetry in this film whatsoever.
No, and I'm not going to make those sort of claims for it, but I think it's aiming at that. Sort of thing.
I think
it
you're
wants
right.
that look on the world.
I agree.
You know, I mean, it is trying to show you the world in which these people live, and the kind of the conditions under which they live, and the conditions that have made people. You know, at one point the characters talk about what has made us accept the long walk as a thing that is normal and acceptable.
Yes.
You know, because it's a dystopian, murderous spectacle.
Yes, and they have no choice in it. They said, you know, nobody.
And not even exciting. It's not even like fucking gladiators fighting tigers. It's just people walking.
Yeah.
And in fact, I should mention this, comparing it to One Battle After Another. One Battle After Another has 2 characters with funny walks. This film has 50 characters walking, not one of them funny.
Yeah.
Now, come on.
The thing about walking, if I'm not mistaken, the long walk, the idea of a long walk always has a kind of a liberatory or emancipatory connotation. You know, the long walk on Washington, the peasant revolt, the long walk to London, the what was it, the 1925 rebellion, you know, also involved a long walk to London. Kind of long walks often mean people coming together to protest, and to die for an idea. This is the opposite. This is kind of kids being coerced into, you know, a sport in which they don't have a chance. I mean, you know, only one will come out alive. Yeah, so, I mean, I love that central idea, that kind of people are reduced, to, their lives are so meaningless that they can be reduced to a spectacle where, like, people have to die. It's not just that they're eliminated, it's that, you know, they are shot, so, I kind of, I liked it conceptually, but it kind of, and, you know, and I found it kind of entertaining and moving without thinking that it's very much of a film.
Yeah. But most of all, it's about, you know, going out, getting some exercise and some fresh air.
Yeah, right.
That's the main thing.
Anyway, I do recommend that people see it. If you like kind of this kind of film, I found it, you know, an entertaining film in spite of being so mechanical and kind of unskilled and offering so little to look at.
Yeah, visually, certainly it's very thin. And I would say that I did ultimately still kind of thematically find it quite thin. Or at least, as you say, broad and sort of overt.
Yes.
But it is doing those things that you're talking about, and it deserves some credit for that, because it's certainly smarter than I thought it was going to be.
Right.
Sure.
Okay, good. Well, on that note, thank you all very much for listening. We're eavesdropping at the movies, and we are at
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and YouTube Music. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, eavesdropping.bsky.social, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.